What is happening, guys? MS3 International Relations Walkthrough. So the focus of this lesson is for the recruits to begin to understand some of the deployments that they may find themselves on going into their careers and the context behind those, whether it's NATO, the UN, or otherwise. So the overarching objective for you guys is for them to get them to communicate effectively. So you were just throwing the ball around the classroom, asking who agrees, who disagrees, why not, that sort of stuff. But the meat of the lesson is a discussion and a research-based activity at the end, and a real chance for them to use the PMISI analytical framework, which they'll need for the Project Athena work that they'll do later on. So it's a good practice session from that point of view. We begin every lesson by hooking them, by engaging them in a topic. This one is a video from the BBC, a documentary, Behind the Front Lines, a 2017 documentary. This is a clip of 5 rifles doing their funny dance drill with the Estonians and the French on Opca Brit. And the thing to note here is the multinationality and the interoperability on show. That will set the tone for the lesson and the kind of context of their deployments. A quick remind and revise of MS2, some of the material that we covered in the last lesson. Something that we often forget to do is link the lessons together. This should refresh the content for them, and it's relevant to this lesson as well. Then we go into this map of the world and a selection of different UK deployments throughout our history, going back to the Falklands, just to illustrate the different context behind our deployments, whether it's UK resilience, and that's flood relief, and you can click on each to find more information, MACA here, or whether it's unilateral UK acting alone. So we've got the Falklands War here, some information. So the way you run this is you just ask them for a couple of minutes, discuss in their groups whether they know these deployments. If they don't, guess what is the context behind them, etc. And then you can click on the icon as you sweep up the activity. Then you throw the question out there: NATO, the United Nations, tell me what you know about them. Let them discuss it first, and then they can back brief it to you. And then you can just reveal the answers, which are hidden. It's important for them to understand the context behind their deployments. Since many of their deployments will fall under the guise of NATO or the United Nations, it's important for them to know what these organizations are. And then this is where ProWise gets a little fancy. So what we need to do at this point is to share screen. We need to share the map that you see on the board with their devices. So we need to start ProConnect here. This should pop up. The room code is there. You can click on the number to make it bigger for them to see at the back. And then you want to send screenshots. That will send this picture to their phones or to their tablets, and then they can start annotating it. And what you want them to do is to annotate it with all the groups, all the actors, all the adversaries, all the organizations, companies, friends, enemies, states, non-states, anyone that they can think of that occupies this space in Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Turkey, etc. Once they've had a chance to edit their screenshots, you retrieve results. So you click on here, retrieve results, and wait for them to come in. View submissions should become active any minute. Okay, there we are. And that shows all the results in. Obviously, only I am in the room at the moment, so it's just mine. If you want to get it up on the big screen and compare a few, you just drag and drop. So you click on the tiled icon on the bottom left of the thing, and then drag it in. And so you can get a couple of up there, and you can compare them. Don't expect a work of art because a lot of them will be doing it on their phones, so it can be quite fiddly. But it's still a good springboard to have a discussion and compare different answers. To return to the main presentation, you just need to go to the right-hand side here and click Return to Presenter. That'll take you back to the main screen, and then you can cycle through. So this activity serves to highlight the complexity of any conflict or any involvement that we have in the world. And the key takeaways will be on the next slide. And they center around, one, the whole force concept or fusion doctrine, the comprehensive approach, whatever you want to call it. But really the fact that the military is only one player on the ground. There are political and economic effects that we need to achieve, other areas where conflict is resolved, and we need to be cognizant of that, of the holistic approach to resolving conflicts. Also, that we need to work with alliances and coalitions. That the UK Army and the UK military rather is small, and that means that we have to deploy multinationally. This is a lesson from MS2 as well, but we are emphasizing that here. And also that we need to work alongside the RAF and the Navy in joint operations. And we always need to be thinking about complementing each other and looking at the bigger picture. give them a break. It's important that we do. And then the final part of this lesson is the real meat of it, where they use the PMISI analytical framework that they're going to need to use for the project work that they do. So we need to give them the chance to start practicing it. They should have seen it already, but they won't be that familiar with it. So it's political, military, economic, social, and infrastructure. And we want to emphasize here that these are not all as important as each other. So for whatever conflict they're using or they're researching, some will be more important than others. So for some conflicts, social and economic factors might be more important and might explain the conflict better than, say, infrastructural or military. So that's what you want them to get thinking about when they're researching their countries or their case studies. So in addition to the PMISI analytical framework, we also need to feed in a dilemma that we face in foreign policy, one that has existed throughout history and that is ongoing now, and that is the conflicts between power on the one hand and values on the other hand, namely the pursuit of power and the pragmatic approach, and the importance of values and the idealistic approach on the other hand. So I'm illustrating this through our relationship with China that we have. There's a video here in Team Power of George Osborne and Boris Johnson visiting China with their business entourage, trying to curry favor and build relationships, illustrating the pragmatic approach. And then on the right-hand side in Team Values, we have the BBC presenter Andrew Marr interviewing or quizzing the Chinese ambassador to the UK about footage coming out of Xinjiang of the Uyghur Muslims in so-called re-education camps, illustrating perhaps the respect for human rights and values is not in sync with ours. So then we asked them, okay, can we think of any other countries where we have a difficult relationship? And they might come up with a few, maybe Saudi Arabia, for example, Afghanistan. And then we ask them to feed into a straw poll. Where do they sit? Are they in favor of team power or team values? Which is more important, pursuit of power or upholding our identity and our values in the world? So let's have a straw poll. You click on ProConnect, start here. And then we want to have a vote. So we click here, vote. You can go A, B, C, and you can say, okay, team power is A, team values is B, or you can choose a color, doesn't really matter. Team power is red, team values is blue. Send that to them. That will go to their devices. Then they start voting, and then the results will appear on the screen. And then you can use that as a launchpad for a discussion. And then at the end of the activity, which we'll do next, you can do it again and see if anyone has changed their position at all. Then we go into the final activity, which is a research and discussion-based activity that they do in their groups. The UN has broken up. They are in charge. You need them to pick 5 countries to form alliances. And here you want them to really be using the PMISI analytical framework as a practice for the project work that they'll be doing, and highlighting the benefits that this brings to the UK and the potential downsides as well. We don't want them to be saying things like, the Americans, the Yanks, because they've got kit. We want them to be going into a bit more detail and justifying why they've chosen these countries. And it will be interesting here to see which approach that they adopt, whether they adopt the pragmatic approach and pick, say, China, Saudi Arabia, Russia, America, or whether they go with the idealistic approach and pick only countries that share our values and share our interests, say America or European countries or Australia or the Five Eyes, things like this. So you give them a good chunk of time, 20 minutes to do this, and then they back brief to the class. This is the real crux, the real meat of the lesson. This is them going away, doing their research and back briefing to you. You just want to be monitoring and going around the room and asking them to making sure that they're on track. After that, we can go into another vote, and at this point, we can revisit the power versus values dilemma, and you can have a secondary vote to see if anyone has shifted their opinion based on the activity that has just happened. It may or may not happen, and then we end on a quiz. And it's important that we do the quiz so that we can see evidence of learning, and we can pick up on any areas where they might be struggling. Make sure that you select ProConnect here, and then they add the room. They put in the room number, and then you press play pro quiz.